but I would get asked these questions in these wedge issues, and I would say that they're not as important as the issues that we all agree on, and that we should talk about those. And people would get very frustrated by that, because they're so hooked into these stupid little psyops. And it prevents people, I think, from moving the ball forward. I think we could be in a much better place if we get the population to get away from those issues.
Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We've got a very special guest today, New Jersey gym owner and alleged patriot, Ian Anderson. I guess. I don't know what to call people anymore. Like it's a domestic violent extremist, I think, if you don't just capitulate to the state.
Yeah, far right wing. That's usually in there as well. Fully automatic.
Yeah, fully semi-automatic, I believe, was the phrase the guy used. That was a general, by the way, that said that.
Yeah.
A general in the military. And the generals in the military these days aren't very good, are they?
No, they're laughing stock of the world, in my opinion, but so is the rest of the country.
Yeah, what are you going to do? We're here to talk about good stuff, though, not shitbags. So the purpose of this show, Citizen, is to, I guess, articulate the difference between a citizen, which is somebody who, has rights, appreciates their rights, but also exercises the responsibilities necessary to secure those rights, or a subject, somebody who just capitulates and sits around and whines about how unfair life is. What do you think about that?
I think it's an important distinction to make. I think most of the country would fall into that second category, and that not only is it important that we learn and educate ourselves about what it means to be a citizen. I think that's sort of a responsibility that we have for all that's the convenient price that you pay for freedom, is being a good citizen. The horrible price that you pay for freedom is war. You know what I mean? And fighting and violence and all of the nasty things, revolution. The easy price to pay for freedom is making sure that system stays intact by you doing whatever your part is in that system.
Well, it's like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, maybe, is a good way to say that.
Yeah, really, 100%.
Somebody said that about 3,000 fucking years ago, by the way. This isn't new. This isn't new stuff. You know what's really funny is these days, again, we're talking to Ian Smith here. I'm going to get into some of the specifics about the gym and all this stuff later, but it is interesting to me these days that it's more or less ordinary dudes who just decide, and women as well, who just decide, people with regular jobs, just like, this is fucking bullshit. We're going to start talking about how it's bullshit. Because typically throughout history, you see extraordinary people, like extremely educated people or people that are extremely accomplished in some kind of bureaucracy or for some degree business, who are the ones who stand out during movements like this. But I think this time it's mostly been regular people, and it's because the aristocracy's gotten so goddamn crazy, and they have their useful idiots, I guess. I call it, they're basically like vampire familiars, right? Like they don't actually have any of the power. They're just trying to suck the power off of these assholes. And
they want to play for what they think is the winning team.
Right. So it turns out it's just going to be ordinary people like yourself and Andy and myself and a host of other people who just like, we're not saying anything revelatory. We're just pointing to how all of human history has worked, how all the collective wisdom has worked throughout all of this, from the Stoics, from the Greeks to the Stoics to now. And it's like, this is all pretty obvious. We're not discovering anything. We're just rediscovering what we already knew.
Yeah, not at all. I don't consider myself anything more than slightly above average intelligence. And I don't think that in order to participate that you need to be that. I mean, this is the opportunity for normal people to have an impact on history. You asked me 3 years ago if I would have ever been capable of the impact that I've had and that we've had at the gym. I would have said the same answer that everybody has. It's that like, oh, I'm just one person kind of thing. But I think recent events have shown us that that's really like a fallacy, because all of the people who have done tremendous things, especially just shorten into the scope of the last 3 years, and who have influenced tons of people and who are like heroes to the people, are just regular people. And I think that's important for people to realize, because it shows that the power is really within the individual. And we have this, I think, in America for a long time, and especially now, we've had this like hero complex, or this savior complex, where it's like, everybody looks to the aristocracy and the bureaucracy to fix the problems. And it's like, who's the next candidate that we're all going to rally behind and then put all of our faith in, as if this person is some infallible and perfect person, who won't make any mistakes, who won't succumb to any bit of selfishness or greed or anything like that. And it's we keep doing it, and it keeps hurting us. Whether it's the people who loved and praised Obama, or if it was the people that loved and praised Trump, and you can follow that back pretty far. But when we see what the individual can do, hopefully others are inspired to say, hey, you know what? Like, I'm gonna take care of myself, and I'm gonna take care of my family, and then I'm gonna take care of my community, and I'm gonna take care of my country, and I'm not gonna wait for that to happen from the top. Because it never trickles all the way down.
Yeah, it's funny how one, to address your overarching point, the point of this whole ordinary guy movement isn't to make anybody into heroes or anything like that, or whatever it is, to make anyone anything. It's to show people how capable they are individually, right? Like that's this is more of a train the trainer kind of situation. Like, look, you can do this stuff. All you got to do is do it. Don't count on anybody else. But we are stuck in this, I guess, mire of hero worship. It was interesting to me how quickly even the the anti-establishment Trump folks, how quickly they turned him into a hero. Even, right? It's like the whole point of this movement was that there are no heroes. You know what I mean? And he's not helping that case too much by saying he's got a major announcement, and then the major announcement is digital trading cards. That was fucking stupid. I mean, it's pretty. Yeah, it was pretty funny. But the point of all this is that, like what you're saying, to secure those rights, to be able to protect yourself, your family, then your community, then your country. You have to educate and involve yourself in the process enough to be effective. Like, there's no hero coming to save you. It's not going to be DeSantis. It's not going to be Trump. It's not going to be Tim Scott. It's not going to be any lefty candidate either. It's just going to be the collective will of the people being exercised in an efficient and effective manner.
Yeah, nobody's going to come into your home and balance your budget. You know what I mean? Like, it's not any politician's fault or anyone else's fault that like 75% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Like these type of things, like you're not going to elect a president and all of a sudden your financial worries are away because you don't know how to spend your money, or because you nobody's going to come fix, the relationship you have with your children. Sure. And culture is I think the really more important thing that we're missing here. We have politics. I think we have too much politics, actually, and not enough sort of culture where people hold themselves to a high standard and are proud. Once upon a time, people were really proud to be Americans. And it didn't matter who you were or like where you came from. People were proud to be here because it was a place of opportunity where they could bet heavily on themselves, and be a part of this experiment, this experiment in freedom. And that's the really important thing I think people need to take away. And, that's been like the subject of pretty much everything when I've done all these speaking engagements. I get up and I tell the story of Attilas, because it's really just a story of two regular guys who were like, no, this isn't going to happen to us. And we're going to figure a way out of it. No matter how many questions we have, no matter what the dangers or threats are, we know what we're doing is right. And I always end by telling people like, hey, there's nothing special about, Frank or I. We decided that we were going to stand on our hill and this is what we believed in, and we weren't going to compromise our values, and that's it. And we stuck to it, and we survived it. It was scary. There were times where we doubted ourselves, but if you do anything worth doing, I think those are feelings that you're going to have to get used to. And I think that's if there's a takeaway from all of this, it's that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if you're going to be proud to be an American, you know, or proud to be anything really, if you're proud to be successful, you have to stay successful, right? Otherwise, you know, you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, I guess. Just talking about how great it was 25 fucking years ago. Phil Jackson said that you're only a success in the moment you perform a successful act, right? It's like a Taoist idea that everything that matters is only in the moment, right? So when you project judgment on things, whether it's good, bad, or internally pride or whatever it is, happiness, it's only in that moment that it exists. You know what I mean? So, you know, the implication is, I guess, to some degree that it's fleeting, but it's also that it requires continual maintenance. You know what I mean? So if you're proud to be an American, if you want to be proud of your country, you damn sure better be putting the work in to make the country worth that pride, right? That's kind of the whole point.
Absolutely.
And
Everything.
it's like an internal version of broken window theory too. Like if things look and are treated nice, then you're going to feel ownership and equity in those things, and you're going to treat them better than you would otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And that starts at just the individual level, like in terms of our self-care. You know, we learned a lot during COVID that people really didn't take care of themselves, and people don't even and didn't know how. You know, so it's like, how do you start? You know, if you want to start, if somebody were to ask the question, you know, okay, well, I want to be a proud American. You know, like, where do you start? Yeah, you start with the individual. Start with yourself. You know, start holding yourself to that higher standard. And just like you said, I like that internal broken window theory. When you start to feel better and look better and have a little bit better of a life, you're gonna want to that's gonna spill over into that sort of next rung, which is like your family. You know, and as your family, same thing. You know, your family is something that you're proud of and you take care of, and you make sure that you're going above and beyond for to keep it successful. You know, I like that term. That's going to pour over into your community, and that just pours out once again.
Yeah, that's where a lot of insecurity comes from too. I think, like if you map that onto personal relationships, the dude who knows he's not doing enough in his personal relationship with his wife or girlfriend or whatever it happens to be, and then sees her getting attention or compliments from somebody else, that's when you get triggered, because you know you're not doing your fucking job. That's typically how it works, right? So when I see these kids in the Pacific Northwest, like burning down cities because they're upset about shit they've never experienced, I'm like, all right, cool, man. Like, it's a mistake to outright dismiss people who are that agitated, I think, because chances are there's something going on there that needs to be addressed, whether you agree with the way they're addressing it or not. It's the same problem that we see throughout society, particularly in the West, and it's this this version of insecure, purposeless nihilism that drives young men to join gangs or mass shoot or commit suicide or join terror organizations. And it's the same thing that has driven up the body image for women and the rise in suicide for young women especially. I mean, this is all the same goddamn disease. You know what I mean?
It is. No, I think it's an interesting way to look at it. And I think it's the correct way to look at it is and I don't even know where. It's one of those things where I'm not even sure like where it begins. Is it the lack of pride that that turns into the lack of purpose, or is it the lack of purpose that turned into the lack of pride? Where like you said, you have generations of, I like to look at men a lot in terms of the problems of the world, because I can identify closest with that. And when young men join gangs, I did 6 years in prison when I was 20 years old, and I saw these young men, and I saw like how much pain that they were in, because of lack of purpose. Nobody had ever showed them how to do that. These are men, again, coming from single mother households, low income households, people that have sort of been ignored and put into a position where they're they don't have a shot really. It's very, very difficult, and they all have the same story and they all suffer from the same pain. And nobody's doing anything about it because these guys just have less and less purpose, and the only place that they find it is in these extreme ideas.
Sure.
That never end well for these guys.
Yeah.
And don't end well for society either.
I mean, people that are missing things that are critical in life, they'll go find them somewhere. If there's not a tight family bond, they're going to go find it somewhere. And typically, outside of the normal family, you're going to find it in a couple places. You'll find it in friend groups, maybe. You'll find it in sports. You'll find it in the military, or you'll find it in more nefarious places, right? Like gangs or people that do drugs and shit like that. Not that I don't do drugs. I love drugs. But don't spend all your time doing it. You know what I mean? Get some work done too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that like you'll find an outlet for this stuff. Like think of a child that didn't get the proper attention from a positive male or female role model. They suffer for that, and then in adulthood, they'll go try to find that role model somewhere in a way that probably isn't a great way to go find it. You know what I mean? It's a pretty classic, and this is just Maslow's hierarchy of needs played out on a very large scale.
Yeah, and I don't know where, with stuff like that, I don't know where the solution is to kind of get through to these populations, because I like what you said. You can't ignore them. It's dangerous to ignore them, because when we ignore them, that problem doesn't go away. And these are the types of issues that we have in society that tend to drive the divisiveness, these extremes. Where most I think most of the population is within 80% of each other. Or 80% of the population is within a couple talking points of each other. Yeah, they may not agree on everything, but I think most people kind of fall in that median line, and you have these extremes of angry people who are driving a wedge between people who are just trying to live good lives.
Are you familiar with the Overton window?
Yeah.
So for the listener, the Overton window is like the range of politically acceptable ideas that most people would agree are acceptable at any given time, right? So you're right. It's 80 or so percent of people usually fall into the same group with regard to most things. People don't want to pay a lot for taxes. They want food to be cheap. They want their communities to be safe. Most of these things that aren't just political wedge issues are typically people get along pretty well in those things. And that's why you should be extremely suspicious of anybody that's trying to lean too heavy on one of the wedge issues. Like if that's what their whole fucking life, if they're an activist and all they care about is abortion, or all they care about is immigration, or all they care about is one of these things, right? If they're just trying to hammer you constantly on that one thing, that person's up to something. They're trying to fucking psyop your ass.
Yeah, I mean, well, just look at our entire political system. It runs on the same 5 or 6, wedge issues every election cycle, and that's one of the things I noticed when I was campaigning for Congress was, I wanted, and there's a huge amount of people who are interested in the real issues, who, like I said, who want those Overton windows issues, who are just looking for safe communities, who are just looking for good schools, all these things. But I would get asked these questions in these wedge issues, and I would say that they're not as important as the issues that we all agree on, and that we should talk about those. And people would get very frustrated by that because they're so hooked into these stupid little psyops. And it prevents people, I think, from moving the ball forward. I think we could be in a much better place if we get the population to get away from those issues, but it's a cultural thing. Again, it's, how do you get people to tune out of that abortion issue? Because the reality is that the success or failure of this country doesn't hinge on the abortion issue.
Right.
Or most of these issues, the success of the country depends on, how far is our national debt clock going to go?
Right.
And what is our level of education on the world stage? Are we producing, young minds that are actually doing something? And we're in these like muddy waters where it doesn't feel like the ball's we're not moving in a direction. We're just kind of sinking, it feels like.
Sure, yeah. I mean, our greatest export used to be our people and our our ideas. That's what the greatest export of the United States used to be, and now our people are fucked, and our ideas are stupid. I mean, this might be the most I've ever seen a particular group of people work against their own best interest ever. You know what I mean? And maybe that's one of the pitfalls of having what we call freedom, but is sort of an illusory freedom. But maybe that's one of the pitfalls. Like people in authoritarian, like true authoritarian abusive regimes know they're in one. You know what I mean? And it's very easy to identify what's wrong, who the enemy is, and what a better situation might look like. And here it's just so easy all the time that people, I mean, it's fucking pathetic. Just think about the cringiest complaint you've ever seen somebody post on the internet, and that's the American anthem now.
Yeah, you're right. And it's that's what I see when I say like we're an embarrassment, and it's like where is our pride at? You know, that's been the question lately. You know, when I ran for Congress, I really thought that like I could make a difference. You know, what a funny joke that was. You know, but I did realize that the solution isn't necessarily going to be found in politics. Yeah, you know, we might find some solutions there, but it's more about what we're doing in our communities. It's just a matter of getting more people to realize that and to start tuning out from the circus, you know, that's on television. You know, when our political system is that we're expecting a big announcement from a former president, you know, and it's an NFT drop. You know, it's just like at what point are people going to be like, all right, you know what? Like, I'm going to focus on my own life right now. Like, and I'm going to make it as good as I possibly can. And I'm just going to focus on that, my family and my community. Because we're following the days of our lives soap opera, and it's not doing any of us any good.
Yeah, to me, I was talking, I don't remember who I was talking to about this the other day. Shit. I don't remember who it was, but we were just discussing the political discourse in the U.S. and, you know, some of these community organizers, as they like to call themselves these days after Obama, or activists or whatever. It's like talking to a 5-year-old about Pokemon cards. You know what I mean? It's like, shut the fuck up, dude. There's nothing you can say that's going to make me care about what you're saying right now. Honestly, like and it doesn't do either of us favors for me to pretend like this is interesting or important.
Well, yeah, that's you know, that's most of the grievances that you hear, like you said, are, you know, it's like, holy shit, these are your problems. Like, this is, you know, people are worried about inequality in like, but it's always in like some weird like space. The, you know, inequality in the workforce for women who work at McDonald's, you know, who are under the age of 25. You know, everybody's got like a victim category to be in. And it's just, it's to the point where like, it's helplessness. You know, these people have zero control over their own lives. And you've seen it for the past 2 years, where people just threw their hands up and said, just tell me what to do. Which brings you back to that idea of just being a subject. People are so confused that, you know what? I got no idea. You know, like, so just mandate what I should do with my life.
Yeah. But it's good to be able to, you know, this is one of the reasons that I enjoyed that this is kind of an ordinary guy revolution, for lack of a better phrase, because it's very practical, right? Like this isn't a Tony Robbins 10 steps to freedom bullshit. It's just like, here are some very basic things you can do in your life to make sure that your life specifically, and then those around you, are better. You know what I mean? And I don't mean better financially necessarily, but it's liberty. There's a couple of axioms about liberty. One, it only exists if it exists for everybody. Otherwise, somebody's still being oppressed, and that should be unacceptable to somebody that has liberty on their mind. The other part is it's a muscle, right? It only works if we all flex and flex at the same time. Which
I think number one thing that we've forgotten.
Yeah, well, that I wanted to bring this up specifically because saying no is a big part of this. Saying no to stupid shit is a big part of this. And you are a pretty good example of doing that on a large scale. Now, we do it here a lot. We talk a lot of shit. It's our job here to talk shit, right? And whenever certain things pop up, like companies that go woke, we fucking get them out of our system, even if it loses us money. We stop taking PayPal because they're a bunch of cunts, and it costs us about $10,000 a month to not take PayPal. It is what it is. I'd rather be able to sleep at night. But your example is also pretty extreme. So I want to run for the audience who hasn't heard of you and hasn't heard your story. Tell them about the gym, how all this went with the lockdowns and so on, and bring us up to date on that.
All right. So, everybody knows the beginning of the story. The Chinese flu was just a news story, and then it, they started to go crazy with it, and we heard whispers of lockdowns, and the death counter came up in the corner of every television show, and then lockdown came, and we were brand new business owners at the time, and we're as regular as it gets as far as business owners. We don't own a chain of gyms. This was our life savings put into a dumpster fire of a gym when it was acquired. And in 9 months, we turned it around. We didn't take a dime from it. We were living the American dream. We were working our butts off 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And just really seeing the fruits of our labor pretty much right away. We turned this place into a thriving little community. And then 9 months into that, the shutdowns came, and we didn't want to, A, because we were a new business, and B, we didn't have a whole lot of information, and that seemed pretty dramatic. So you're gonna tell me we're gonna lock the whole country down for 14 days, and that's just gonna make the flu go away, or the virus go away. But we didn't know enough, to confidently stay open. I wasn't 100% certain on it. It smelled like BS to me, but I really wasn't sure. Same went for my partner, and at the end of the day, we're not looking to hurt anybody. We were very skeptical. I was afraid of a slippery slope, kind of thing here, because I've read a history book or two, and I know when government usually acquires some sort of new power, they are very, very hesitant, if ever, to give it back. So we shut down, but we kept paying attention.
Wait, before you keep going there's a good example of that just happened. So Bernie Sanders tried to basically repeal the War Powers Act. The justification that every president since George W. Bush has used to go to war with other people without the consent of Congress. Now, I rarely find myself agreeing with Bernie Sanders, right? But this one was pretty obvious, and even it got nowhere. They threatened him with something, who the fuck knows what, and he immediately capitulated and said, "Oh, it's all right then. I guess we'll just keep bombing Yemen for the rest of our lives." And now this is 400.
And look at what that has cost us as the American people. You know what I mean? When that was passed, I'm sure not nobody, but I'm sure most people weren't thinking that it would lead us into, how many conflicts? I couldn't even say with accuracy. It's more than half a dozen.
Well, the important number is like $22 trillion.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
that's, and we have a $31 trillion debt, which seems like when 2/3 of something is coming from something that isn't even authorized by the Constitution, we might have a fucking problem, right?
We have a major problem.
Yeah, but
absolutely.
To your point, even the people who would gain that power back, Congress refuses to take it back from the president. That's how fucking much gravity there is to giving power back to the state. You can never. That should be a fucking a no-go.
An automatic no.
Yeah.
If it's not in the founding documents, that we're not authorized.
Mm-hmm.
But so, and I think that's an important thing for people to realize. But whatever, we closed down. We had a lot of work to do, so we kept going to work. And very quickly we were paying attention to why we were shut down. So we were trying to understand the science. We were doing our homework. We were reading articles on studies on PubMed and kind of staying up to date with science, trying to learn everything we could, whether it was from the mainstream media, whether it was from CDC, or whether it was from some other publication, from around the world. And it just kind of wasn't making sense. Like we were seeing these videos of people drop dead in the streets, but nobody you saw was really sick. And then we were, I'd be driving to work, and the Walmart and the mall is there's not an empty space in the parking lot, but I pull into my little strip mall, where my gym is, and it's a ghost town, so it was like, all right, this isn't making sense. And the politics was politics as usual. So we paid attention to who told us to shut down, the politicians, and what it was, which was COVID. And neither one of those things made sense. So we made the decision to reopen, but we did so with a 15-point safety protocol that went so far above and beyond that what anybody was doing or even suggesting had to be done, that it would be ludicrous to shut us down. I mean, there was literally a spray bottle in every single gym member's hand, and people were spraying stuff down before they used it, after they used it. There was air filters. There was air scrubbers. We had our HVAC system upgraded. You name it, we did it. We moved the gym all around, so nothing was within 6 feet of each other. There were markings on the ground. We were taking people's temperatures. We were contact tracing. We had masks on originally. And we said, all right, well, we're going to open. So, if you want to come talk to us, you said 2 weeks. It's been 2 months. We're happy to show you this plan. We think it's a good one. Maybe since you don't have one, you could look at it. Government ignored us, and we said, okay. So we opened. Started with citations. All said, we got over 80 citations, almost 90 municipal citations, everything from violation of a governor's orders to public nuisance to operating without a business license, disturbing the peace, a whole bunch of other things. And then it just kept escalating from there. We had a health department shut down. We had a court order to shut down. Our doors were physically, the locks were physically changed. We picked them. We went back inside. We filed a lawsuit that got dismissed in federal court based on the fact that we had criminal citations in the state. So it was just a way of blocking us. It wasn't a legitimate bad lawsuit. And it just continued to escalate. We got fined $15,000 per day for close to 5 months. For every day that we were open, we were fined whatever that amount was. We had our bank accounts emptied by Santander Bank to the tune of $200,000. We were arrested. We had members arrested. You name it. So in the end, we stood firm, and there's still some lawsuits going on. But one of the most damaging things they did was they suspended, or they took our business license. Right before they reopened gyms. They reopened gyms on September 1st. They took our business license like the end of August. As just like a spiteful move to put us out of business. And we were able to operate for 2 years without charging a single member. We did only donations and t-shirt sales, and we were able to pay not only our normal overhead, but our increased overhead with all the safety measures, and then a massive $700,000 legal battle. And we were able to just kind of stand firm. We just kept opening the gym. They just kept, bringing new punishments on us until eventually they ran out of things to do to us. They couldn't shut us down. We had garnered too much support. And the township, the mayor of the township had contacted our lawyers almost 2 years into this and said, when are they? Because we would just sue the township for our business license, and we would lose. And we'd sue again, and we'd sue again, and sue again, and sue again. We were just relentless. And the mayor called and said, how long are these guys going to keep this up for? And the lawyer said, until they get the business license back. So what I assume is he could no longer sort of justify the lawsuits to the township. Going to court's $30,000 on the low end if you have one lawyer, and they had a team of them. So I don't think he could justify the expense to the township anymore. We were 2 years out from COVID almost. We were 2 years out from COVID, and they finally just gave our business license back. So that happened during my run for Congress. So it was the first time we were able to become a normal business again, charge members, do what we set out to do. The other stuff's still in court. It just kind of drags and drags and drags. It's 30 days for a motion, 30 days for a reply, 30 days for the judge to read it, 30 days for a court date, and it just kind of drags on in the end. But we're still going with it.
And I assume you're going to file lawsuits for damages at some point, right? Because this is pretty extreme.
Yeah. So the interesting thing was they manipulated the court system so badly during all of this that everything was through Zoom, which is a joke. Like if you're gonna be held accountable in a court of law, I think it should at least be face to face. Like Zoom court is a joke. We're watching. The judge's kitchen is like in the background. as we're like talking, this quote unquote serious idea of the lockdowns. Um, and we were just muted the whole time. Like, we're on a Zoom call right now. Like, you can mute me if you want as the host. We were muted. So we never spoke a word of our own legal defense until we reached a municipal court much later down the line. Because we were suing the township, our municipal action was kicked to a local municipality not too far from us. And it was the first time a judge actually like listened to us. And she was blown away by all of this. And, we're explaining it in the way that I just did, kind of throwing it all at you at once, the short version of the long story. And, she was blown away. And she said the same thing. She's like, I don't know how the state justified any of this. So we're still to be heard in that court. But eventually, once all of the chips fall and once all of the wrongdoing is at least acknowledged, then the lawsuits coming back at them can happen.
And what do you have going on right now?
So I ran for Congress, and that was an interesting experience. I did it on the back end of Atilis. As we got the business license back, it was right around the time that I declared my run, and I did that because I wanted to. I was tired of like waiting to react to bad government, because it feels like that's the game we're always playing. It's like we're always rushing to the fire. And we're always on our back foot. Like we're always responding to some sort of like nonsense. Mm-hmm. So I figured I'd run. And I gave that my best shot. It was way more difficult than I had imagined. And it's a way uglier game than I had even thought. And I understood that it wasn't going into a fair fight. And then I took a little bit of time off, and I've launched some other businesses, and I got back into the thing that I love, which is actually coaching. Mm-hmm. I haven't been able to. That's what I started out as a trainer. And when I bought the gym, opening the gym kind of took me away from it for a little while. And then the COVID madness, got me away from what I actually do for a profession, which is coaching. And in the meantime, I wrote a book. About all of it, starting with some events in my life that kind of shaped the person I've become. I talk about why I was in prison, what it was like in prison, and the lessons that I've learned along the way, and how I've tried to improve. I'm a person who makes a lot of mistakes. I've put myself in some bad situations over and over and over again, and all that's been my fault. But I've learned a lot along the way, and prison made me into the type of person that was willing, I think, to fight for my freedom, because I truly understood what it was like to have your freedom taken away from you. And I deserved to be in prison. That was, I'm not complaining about that, but I got to feel like what it was like to have no rights, to be told when you can eat, when you can sleep, where I go, who I talk to, when I can call my family, all of these things. And you don't appreciate those things until you don't have them. So when it came time, for me to close the gym, I was deeply reminded of like that feeling of like, man, this is not okay. And this time there was no reason for that. You know what I mean? There wasn't, I hadn't done something wrong that I deserved to lose my business. I hadn't violated any laws. I was just like every other regular American who was kind of minding their business. In those later years of the feel good Trump, term, enjoying the nationalism and money in our pockets, however much of a false sense of security that may have been. And I think that really had a dramatic impact on my ability to say, all right, like I'm willing to fight for this. You know what I mean? Because I know what it feels like. So I talk about the Attila story in greater detail, all the ins and outs of it, what it was like on the inside. Again, highlighting the idea that like, hey, there's nothing special. You know what I mean? Like this is a story of two regular guys. Then I talk about my Congress run, and kind of sum it all up in a call to action for the average citizen to get involved. That's the whole thought of the book is, hey, listen to this story. I've been through some crazy things. I've overcome some nasty obstacles, but I was able to do some great things after that. And there's absolutely nothing different about me than you or any other American. It's just a matter of are you going to learn from the lessons or are you going to learn from the mistakes that you've made and grow, or are you going to, accept this victim culture that we have in America where, You know, a lot of people, and I watched a lot of them, a lot of guys that I was in prison with, that was the final chapter of their life. You know, that was the conclusion. They never did anything after that, or they went back. And I never wanted to be one of those guys. So
Yeah, it's interesting how there's such a fine line between success and then victimhood and nihilism for certain people. For maybe not even for certain people, maybe for most people. It's like folks are just teetering on the edge between this and that. I'm sure part of it is expectation, right? We live in America. We expect to be successful. But I feel like a lot of people just never took the time to unpack what that means. Like you're expected to be successful because you have all the tools here you need to succeed, but the tools don't work themselves, right? Like you still have to do the work.
yeah, no, I think that's a generational problem we have, is that we're born in America and we forget that success isn't just granted, it's earned. You know, you're not successful because you're American, or you're not special because you're an American. It's special that you are an American and that you have the ability to legitimately do whatever you want with your life. Like there's, I'm reading Discipline is Destiny by Ryan Holiday right now. And in the opening, I think it's the opening chapter of the book, or actually it's the introduction. You know, he talks about how like the modern life that every single person in the country, almost every single person in the country has access to, is a life of luxury beyond the like the wildest imaginations of like kings and rulers of the past. You know, like you have, not only do you have luxury, but you have opportunity like never before. And the fact that you're not choosing to see it as, hey, look at all these tools I have, instead of like, hey, why am I not successful yet? Is an underlying issue that, especially as as the younger generations come up, you're seeing that more and more. I bet I probably sound like every single person who's getting into the middle of their life saying that, but like the younger generation seem to get worse with this nihilism, with this expectation that that the world is supposed to revolve around them.
Yeah, but when our parents were mad at us for when our parents looked at us and said, "You're I can't believe what you're doing," blah blah blah. It's like, all right, cool. I'm starting my own business though. It's I dropped out of college and I'm starting my own business. I know you thought college was the only way to fucking be successful, but now it's like kids are just whining about social issues and refusing to go to work. We have 11 million open jobs in the United States right now. It's like, all right, cool, man. That's not a great thing, probably, right? I mean, so 65% of the people that are unemployed right now are not looking for work. That's a Bureau of Labor Statistics thing that just came out. That's the second part of the sentence when the Biden administration says we have gotten unemployment down to 3.5%. Like, yeah, technically that's true. But the 65% of people in that group just aren't looking for work anymore.
Yeah, they're just not working at all. Yeah.
So they're, I guess, living with their parents. I don't fucking know.
You know, it's like I can't even imagine living like that. But there are so many. There's obviously a huge portion of the population that is, and yeah, that's concerning. Every small business that you walk into these days has a help wanted sign on the door. I mean, almost every single one. And if that's not a little bit like eerie to you, I don't know what, like that kind of gives me an eerie feeling, like, man, where's everybody at? Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean there's a help wanted sign on every door? Every restaurant I've been to, every small business restaurant I've been to has a help wanted sign on the door. I live in a small little town. There's help wanted signs everywhere. And the ramifications of that, I don't know if I quite understand them, but I can understand that it's probably not a good thing that we have all these open jobs, because the people working are being overworked, I guess. And then they're supporting a portion of the population who's just choosing not to work.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of obvious ramifications from that. And it's that, this is the infrastructure that makes everything we do possible. So you go on vacation and you take a flight and then get a rental car and then fill up that rental car at the gas station and then go to a restaurant, go to your hotel. Every single fucking stop you make, there are people there working hard. And sometimes it's you there at that hotel or that gas station or whatever the fuck working hard and somebody else is on vacation. But to allow any of us to ever do it, we all have to do our goddamn jobs. That's the fucking ramification, right?
Yeah.
So it's, and I don't think these kids are lazy either. I know my girl's got a fucking 15-year-old. He's not lazy. When he's motivated, he'll do something. He's just like anybody else. He's like any other fucking teenage boy ever. When he's motivated to do something, he'll do it. When not, he's just like, ugh. Because that's how I was. If somebody tried to get me to do some shit I didn't want to do when I was 15, I'd be like, fuck you. I'm not doing that. But, you know, it's now they're carrying that teenage bullshit with them into their 20s. And there's a lot of reasons for it, because most of these kids get told they need to go get a degree or even an advanced degree and go $100,000 in debt right off the cusp. You know what I mean? They don't learn any life lessons during this process. All they learn is that you immediately get saddled with debt. All right, cool. That sucks, but I'll pay it off. Okay, well, now I can't because the pay market has been stagnant for 27 years. People have not had a raise relative to inflation in 27 years in this country. And then you look at the housing crisis.
It's really incredible.
Yeah, it's fucked. Then you look at the housing market. It's like usually 25 to 30-year-olds were getting into the housing market. They were buying a fucking $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 house if you were in a richer area as their starter home. Now, that's not the case. 65% of these people are renting now, and the other 35% are living at their parents' house. Nobody in that age group owns homes anymore. So it's like, I understand to some degree why they truly believe that nothing they do matters, that the 9-to-5 jobs don't matter, that their only shot is to hold their breath and pray to win the lottery. That's the general consensus among these people. And to be honest,
wait for some bailout or whatever, you know, because they're, and I mean, I get it too. And I was angry when I finished, you know, I finished college because I had already started it, you know, and I was mad at myself for going back after prison. Because I didn't need it. But I was told that we were told that in our generation that you had to go to college and get a degree. And it's like the options that these kids think they have in front of them, nobody's teaching them the other options that they have, or nobody's really encouraging them to, they're certainly not being encouraged by the public education system to think of anything other than going to college. You know, and some of them might find their way to better information, but most probably don't. And you're right. It's, you know, I'd probably be a little discouraged too if those are my choices. Okay, go to college, you know, where I'm going to be surrounded, especially if you talk about like the normal kid, you know, who probably isn't just somebody who would just be working at a hotel, or somebody who would just, you know, is totally content with that standard of life, just, you know, a middle income, whatever. There's no way out of that trap for them. You know, it's only getting worse. School continues to get more expensive every single year. The job market is, you know, you have to go further and further and further into school in order to even get something of value out of it. And then by then you're buried under 6 figures worth of debt with an interest rate, you know, and a $36,000 a year job.
Yeah, big time. I mean, that's
the worst deal ever.
And when I hear people on the conservative side say, fucking suck it up and pull yourself up by your bootstraps, like, what fucking boots are these people wearing exactly? We've taken their boots away. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, well, they're just as screwed as you know, they're just as screwed as the conservatives are on the other side, complaining about the other end of the system. You know what I mean? They're complaining. And both sides have a valid grief, you know, but it's not with each other. Like, it shouldn't be with each other. It's directed at each other, but it's, you know, we should be looking at these bigger issues. Like, why is it so expensive to go to school? Oh, well, you know, if you look at any, you can graph the entrance of the government into the public or the college loan market and the rising costs. You know what I mean? And that's what we should be mad about. We should be mad that kids want bailouts, you know, even though I don't want to pay for anybody's bailout, But at this point, you're paying for everybody's everything else anyway. So I don't even know if that matters. I mean, we've sent billions of dollars to Ukraine. You know, we've sent billions of dollars here. At this point, I don't think any of it matters. We're so far into it that until we start to look at the systems or the policies that are creating these problems, we just keep fighting amongst each other.
Sure.
You know, and that gets really, and I saw that when I was in Congress. It's, you know, these people hate each other, or when I was running for Congress, excuse me, these people hate each other, and they're arguing over something that neither of them caused.
Yeah. It's,
you know?
it's kind of silly, man. And, you know, to carry it a little farther, it's when we articulate these problems, and there are genuine grievances from the right and the left, when it comes to universities, they're pretty clearly on the left side of the fence, right? So
Yeah.
professor salaries have not increased relative to inflation, but the administrative cost to run a university has gone up 2,000% relative to inflation over the last 40 years. 2,000%. I mean, what the fuck? That's 20 times more costly relative to inflation than it was before. It's because every department has a fucking equity and inclusion person now for no fucking reason.
Yeah.
Somebody that has a weird degree in something that's now an expert in inclusivity, and they're making $150,000 a year to fucking be a Karen. I mean, it's like the dumbest shit of all time.
Yeah, and our universities are bloated with them in every department. I mean, I was looking at, I forget what it was. I think it was just a documentary, but they were just showing graphs and charts of the school costs and just putting it into like a pie graph. The amount of administrative costs compared to what goes to education is daunting, and it shouldn't be. It should be a fraction of it. But that's what happens when government steps in and they start giving free money out. You know, when government comes in and they just start writing blank checks for people's education, you know, these colleges are going to naturally do that. You know,
Yeah.
That's why we should have free markets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, I mean, on the other side of that argument with free markets, so Sagar and Yeti posted about this morning, but this is something we've known for a long time. I think it was talking about Princeton. They have a $33 billion endowment or $37 billion endowment, and it makes 11% per year on that investment. So they make about, let's call it $3.5 billion a year. With an investment, I think, of 1.5, so they're basically clearing 1.9 billion a year. They could allow everybody that goes to school there to go there for free. They could relieve every debt that's owed to them and they would still make over $1 billion a year. That's just one university, one Ivy League university. I mean, that's fucking insane. Why would that be the case?
Yeah, it's an interesting problem because I don't even know where the problem is very clear, but what's the solution for something like that?
Well,
Do you
I
have
mean,
the government step in, you know, or do people just have to start? Do people just have to get educated and aware enough that these places are ripping them the fuck off?
I think it's the latter. I don't trust the government to handle anything, frankly.
Yeah. That's more of a hypothetical, but how do you get to that second place? You know, how do you, because you're going to have people who bite and who will continue to support something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the best disinfectant is sunlight. Just you put the information out there and wait. But when the other problems we're talking about with the way kids, I mean, you think about the way that the 2020 election was manipulated. It wasn't with voting machines. It was with fucking Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and fucking Google and YouTube. That's how it really happened. You don't have to hack a machine when you can hack somebody's mind. And it works both ways. You know what I mean? We have to teach these kids that it's okay to have a regular job, that trade jobs are good and pay really fucking well and they have good benefits, that there are smart ways to do college, like going to community college for 2 years first and then going to fucking a major university after that, buying property, saving money, not spending money on stupid shit. You know, there's a ton of life skills that a lot of us used over the years that somehow didn't get translated to the next generation, and I feel like that's more on us than them.
Yeah, no, it is. It's on the parents of this generation that have turned their kids over to to be raised by cell phones. It's one of the worst things I see is, I remember in the grocery store, like if I was being bad, my mom would stop everything that she was doing and nothing would go on until I was disciplined, whether it took 5 seconds or 5 minutes. Now it's like, this is the answer. They're like, here's the phone. If you cry, if you whine, if you do this, here's the phone. And none of these values are being translated because we have like a disengaged population where it's just easier. That people go to the easiest choice by default.
Yeah,
right?
it's easier just to give your crying kid McDonald's French fries instead of telling them to shut the fuck up and eat their vegetables,
exactly.
right?
Or to hand them the phone and let them play a game. Instead of stopping, even if they have a 5-minute fit in the supermarket and you're standing there, and everybody's walking around you while your kid's kicking and screaming on the floor, that's not fun. I don't want to waste 5 minutes doing that. I'm busy. People have lives to live, but that's the price you pay to raise a good human. And that goes back to the idea from the very beginning of the show, talking about you pay the price now or you pay the bigger price later. So are you going to take that 5 minutes and whip your kid into shape, or are you going to hand them some fries from McDonald's and just accept that anytime they cry, you are going to have to surrender some ground in order to save yourself from the inconvenience of pulling the car over?
Yeah.
And that translates to everything, not just parenting, your personal life, your financial life, all that. Do you need that $5 fucking Frappuccino every day? No. Get yourself a coffee maker and drink a fucking cup of coffee.
Yeah.
All these little things, but it's and you can spread that out to anything. People wanted to keep their businesses shut down, even though they know the government, or they were still listening to mandates, even though they knew the government was wrong, because it was easier in the moment for them just to put their head into the sand and hope to survive it than it would be to address the elephant in the room, that they're being governed by psychopaths.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it's, at the end of that train of thought is this idea of delayed gratification, which is a very popular buzz phrase now. But what's the purpose of that? The purpose of delayed gratification isn't just to prove to yourself that you can delay the gratification. It's not even the mechanics of resisting necessarily. It is teaching your brain the relationship between effort and reward. That's the purpose. Yes. And there has to be a beat in the middle of that for you to truly understand it. That's why I tell people call me pissed off or upset. I'm like, all right, cool. Take a beat and don't try to escape what you're feeling right now. Absorb it. If you're stressed out, feel stressed out. If you're fucking pissed off, feel pissed off, because pretending like it's not happening is not going to help you. And then calm down and figure out why that thing was making you mad, or what it is, or how you can solve it, or whatever else. Like you can't escape these things. Hard work is required for good result. That's just the way it is. You know what I mean? And that sometimes it's eating shit personally and just having to deal with it because it sucks. Sometimes it's professionally. Sometimes it's working out. Sometimes it's eating right. Sometimes it's doing the right thing, even when you know it would be easier to do the wrong thing. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, there's a price to pay. Either way, there's a price to pay. If it's an old video. I've seen it circulated a couple times. I don't even know the gentleman's name, but he's saying, life is risky. Everything is risky. He's like, if you think going into business is risky, just wait until you didn't go into business until you get the bill not going to business. If you think investing is risky, wait till you get the bill for not investing, and so on and so on. And that's a really, really simple concept, but it just requires the willingness to sacrifice something small, and to go through some sort of struggling or some sort of conflict or whatever it is, some sort of discomfort to achieve a much greater goal. Like you have to do it, and you have to do it daily, and you have to do it all the time. But in the end of that path is much better than the path where you're trying to have comfort right now. Mm-hmm. You don't want to work out right now. You don't feel like doing this right now. It's easier to just go grab a cup of coffee on your way to work than it is to wake up 5 minutes earlier and do it, or whatever it is. It's easier. And you wind up at the end of that road paying the bill at the end. Yeah. So you pay the bill at the end with a shitty life. with being unhealthy, with having no sort of wealth, no property, no nothing, and every day's, and again, that's the living paycheck to paycheck kind of, obviously some people have to do that for a period, but if you're living paycheck to paycheck for the entire period of your life, if you're 40 something years old and you've been living paycheck to paycheck since your first paycheck, you're going to wind up, the old guy with no retirement, who's going to work his way into the grave, and who's going to be eating, cans of Campbell's soup in a microwave in an apartment by himself at 90 years old when nobody loves you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's.
Yeah, exactly. You never had kids or whatever it is because you weren't able to do anything. You weren't able to sacrifice something in the moment to pay for something great down the line.
Yeah, and it's, that could all sound like a platitude, but a really easy way to visualize the actual result is I think the average American works, let's see, 7 times 5 equals 260 days, 250 days a year. So 250 times your fucking $7 coffee drink is $1,750 a year. And now if you're making $40,000 a year, 1,700, like almost $2,000 that you would save is a lot of fucking money for you, right?
Yeah, and compound that over the course of just 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't. Look, I'm not telling you not to buy coffee when you go out. Do whatever you want, but don't pretend like you don't have options. You know what I mean? And
I think that's the most important thing right there is do what you want, but you can't complain about the results that you didn't get because you weren't willing to express a little bit of discipline or to engage in your life beyond, because most of those actions are what I would call like unconscious choices. I mean, we're just like going around, like we're just driving down the street and all of a sudden you just need a cup of coffee or you need this, instead of just saying like, you know what, I don't need that right now. It's just a craving I have. It's just an urge I have. I used to be, when I was younger, I remember, when I had my first good year in business as an independent trainer, I did really well. I was super successful. I was one of the busiest trainers in the South Jersey area. And at the end of the year, I remember being like, having to pay my taxes and being like, fuck, like, not only do I not have money for the taxes, like I have to put this on a credit card. Like, cause I don't even have any money in my savings. And like, where did all this money I made? And it was, I spent the year just kind of enjoying, but not paying attention to the little details. It was, oh, let's go to dinner here. Let's go to dinner. And none of those things are inherently bad things. But because I wasn't actively participating in my own life and I wasn't thinking, it just seemed like a $40 dinner. It just seemed like, a night out at the bar for a couple beers. And it just, just sign the check. And at the end of the year, I remember I was so embarrassed with myself because I had been so proud all year that I was building something. And I got to the end of the year and I was like, wow, there's nothing, like I haven't done anything. Yeah, I had some fun. I ate some good meals. I traveled. I did some fun things, but I didn't need to do all of that. I would have had just as good of a year had I exercised just a little bit of discipline.
Yeah.
That was a big wake up call for me because, when I say I was proud, I had never really, this is me coming out of prison, feeling ashamed of lagging behind my peers. And the sense of pride I had was, man, look at me. Like look how good I am. And then at the end of the year, it was a complete failure because all I had done was, take a couple pictures out with some friends in some cool places on my Instagram. And I felt like such a fool for it. But people are living their whole lives like that, not noticing that they have the option to live however they want. And they can be as free and as independent and as successful as they want to be, but it's just not going to be handed to you. Yeah,
for sure. I appreciate you coming on today and discussing all this stuff. It's been very interesting, and I'm looking forward to reading the book. Tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find the book.
Absolutely. So you can find me, Ian Smith Fitness, on pretty much every social media there is. I'm loudest and most engaged on Instagram and now Twitter, because Twitter's kind of fun now. And there's a link in my bio to all my other social media and stuff like that there. And the book is called Find Your Hill. It is getting done probably today. It's actually, you're the laptop's sitting on top of the final version of the manuscript, and then it's going off to the editor. So I'm really excited about it. You can find that at findyourhill.com.
Sweet. Well, thanks for coming today, man. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. We'll see all you guys. Thanks for listening. This has been Citizen.